Good day, dear viewers at home. Welcome to Home Learning. This is SGCSE English Language. In our previous lesson, we were looking at the different ways in which we can incorporate the use of adverbs whenever we are writing, because whenever we have to write to persuade, we need to be able to achieve that purpose. And of course, we talked about using adverbs in terms of appealing to whatever reader we have as our audience. Today we are continuing with us looking at the types of different registers that we can use whenever we write. We know that in the English language, we've got so many different registers or language that we can use according to a certain specific purpose and according to a certain need at that particular time. What is the task that is at hand determines what language we have to use and how we have to use it. In the examination, one of the things that you are tested on is the fact that can you be able to recognize and identify the language that you have to use to serve a certain purpose or one specific purpose that has been given to you. Maybe to put this simpler, imagine you have a friend of yours. Maybe your friend has won 1 million emalangeni, or your friend has bought a new smartphone, and you are to write a letter to your friend and congratulating him or her. The language that you're going to use there is different from the language that you will use if your friend, let's say, probably has lost a loved one. It's the same friend, but it's different scenarios. So, you cannot use the same language for that. Sometimes we see our friends, we see our parents, and you study the mood they are in, and then you can see that, no, today I need to watch my tongue. Because we can see the mood that they are not in a good mood. So we have to kind of adapt to whatever mood that they are in so that we avoid any form of conflict or coming hard on them, probably because they are not in the same mood as ours. It's the same thing with language. Language is determined by what is it that we are supposed to do. For our purposes in the examination, we are given a task. And in that task, we are to fulfill a certain purpose. And fulfilling the certain purpose will be tested whether we can be able to use the language appropriately to that context so that we do what we are supposed to be doing. So that is what we'll be looking at today. But our emphasis for today's lesson will be on a friendly register. That's our emphasis for today's lesson. We are looking at a friendly register. A friendly register can always be used in informal situations. That is why sometimes it is referred to as what? As informal language or register. Because it is widely, or rather it is used in informal situations. So as a learner, you are expected to be able to identify situations where you are supposed to use friendly register or one which is formal, that is a more serious, calm tone. Okay, so like I've said, our emphasis today is on friendly register. And when can we use a friendly register? What determines which type of register to use or language or diction to use? It is the one key part. That's the audience. The audience is the one that determines the language that we have to use. Audience meaning what? Whenever we write, we've got the reader. All right? Who is the one person who is meant to read whatever that we are writing? That is going to determine what audience, rather, what purpose, or maybe the language that we're going to use. That is the audience. Who is meant to read? Who is the target person to read whatever that I'm writing? Take, for instance, you may be writing to your aunt. You may be writing to your sister about probably your trip that you had outside the country. When you write to your sister, there are so many details that you're going to use, that you're going to include in your writing. But you most probably won't use the same details, or rather give the same details to a letter to your aunt. So these two people are different, and the level of respect that you have for them, it's different. There's a certain tone of voice that you use whenever you speak to your sister. You can get angry at your sister. You can probably curse in front of your sister, but definitely you can't do it in the vicinity of your aunt. So that same approach that we have in real life situations, it's the same approach that we have to carry forward to even our writing. All right. So we are saying here the most important thing whenever we write is that we should be able to look at the audience, and then having looked at the audience, you can decide on the register. You can decide on the register. Are you writing to your sister? Are you writing to an aunt? And both of these, sister and aunt, are friendly registers. But even within the friendly register, there are certain levels. There's a certain tone that you can use, which is one important thing that we're going to talk about. There's a certain tone that you can use when you speak to your aunt, which will be different from the tone that you can use when speaking to your sister, or writing, in this case, to your sister. Like we said, you can get angry, you can curse in front of your sister, but you cannot do the same in front of your aunt. All right, let's look at the registers, or rather, maybe more specific examples, maybe practical ones, and see what is it that we can talk about. So, looking at a friendly register, what is it exactly? A friendly register, it is a level of language that falls in between let's say, informal, that falls in between informal spoken and informal, or rather, and formal written. We'll give examples of this. A friendly register, it is one register that falls in between informal spoken. That is when you speak as friends. We've got so many different words that we use. We use slang, we use chatty language and all. But then that slang that we use when we speak informally, when you talk to your friend, probably, let's go and hang out at the movie zone or at the mall. it's not necessarily acceptable when it comes to friendly register because it is acceptable as an informal spoken. All right. Then we also have a formal written where you use a calm tone, a serious one. All right. And that language that falls in between the informal spoken and formal written is a friendly register. Within friendly register, the way we describe this, with the way we explain what a friendly register is, it's because within the friendly register, it is possible that you get too informal. It is possible to get too informal, which is not acceptable. Being too informal is not acceptable. What is it that I mean by saying maybe you are too informal? Before we get confused about that, the things that we do not have to do, things that we have to avoid at all costs, even when you are writing a friendly register, is getting too informal. Examples of getting too informal. I'll give three things that are common. The first one, we are not supposed, I'll say, do not use slang. Using a slang language is not acceptable in informal writing. If you do that, you are being too informal. For example, I like to chill out. Okay, that's out at the beach. I like to chill out at the beach. The word or phrase chill out, that's a phrasal verb there, is not acceptable because it is too informal. What makes us say it is too informal? It is because it is appropriate for what? Informal spoken. When you're speaking with your friend, you can talk about chilling out. It's okay. But when you are writing in the standard English language, chilling out is not acceptable because it becomes too informal. All right. Let's give further examples of this. We can have another one saying that maybe the second one, hanging out with my friends, or rather, let's just say hanging at the mall is cool. Here, the word hanging, maybe we can include out there. Hanging out at the mall is cool. So the phrasal verb hanging out and cool are not acceptable in a friendly register because they are too informal. They are what? They are slang language that is used. You go to the dictionary, cool means something else. It has to do with a certain degree of hotness or coldness. Hanging out, again, has got a different meaning formally. So it cannot then be used in informal writing because it is too formal. Let's get to maybe a third example, or a second one, as far as what not to do when is the language too informal. All right, we've just talked about using slang. The second one, we say that do not use phonetic sounds. Do not use phonetic sounds for words. Do not use what? Phonetic sounds for words. That is, basically this means that you spell or you write a word such that it looks the way it sounds. You assimilate certain syllables or certain letters from the word. For example, and that's it. How you're doing. Instead of writing what, how are you doing? This is acceptable as a friendly register. This one is not acceptable as a friendly register. That is the first one. It is not acceptable because it is too informal. It might be okay when you are speaking, when you're talking to your friend, but when you are writing, it is not acceptable. All right, so these are phonetic sounds. For example, you can say some of them, they use this one, y'all, for what? For you all. So this, not acceptable. You all is the one that is acceptable. So those are phonetic sounds that sometimes we get to use. Let these not be mistaken for contracted forms of writing. For example, when we talk of contracted forms of writing, we talk of saying I'm instead of I am. This is perfectly fine. These are contracted forms of writing which are fine. They are different from phonetics because in phonetics sometimes you can find that you put together two words together to form one. Not in an acceptable way, like probably you'll have to use a hyphen to do that. That is the acceptable part. But then here we are referring like saying that probably my mother is, it's kinda, instead of what? Kind of. Which again, either way, you cannot use the fact that my mother is kind of, or rather kind of freaks out. It wouldn't be acceptable too. Okay. So these are just examples of phonetic sounds which you are not supposed to do. Let's now get to the third one. The third way in which most learners make mistakes, and they do what? They write they think they are writing informally when they are getting too informal, which is not acceptable. For example, here we are talking about what? We are talking about SMS language. And SMS language is not acceptable. Sometimes it is also called chatty language. Okay. I think even others, you'll hear them talking of colloquial language. So here, SMS language is when you are going to use symbols to represent words, or use numerals instead of words, or use just one letter, U, for the word you. Not acceptable. This is the acceptable one. There are use that will there are those who will use for instead of for. This is not acceptable, even when you are writing to your best friend. For the purposes of our language, it is not acceptable. Okay, and then maybe another one which is so common. One may write a sentence and say, okay, how are you? Or rather, let's correct that one. How are you? And then there's this one. How are you? So for both, this one is not correct. And then the next one, which is written in appropriate language, this one would say it is correct. Okay, so SMS language or chatty language is not acceptable by so if you use it, rather you'll be being too informal, which is not what we want. Okay, so I want us now to move on to the different types of friendly registers. I want us to look at the different types of friendly registers. Okay, we said that the register, it differs the register differs according to we have this, the purpose. And we also have what we talked about, and we referred to it as the audience. Okay, I'm more interested in this one. That is the purpose. I'm more interested in the one on the purpose. How can a register or the language that you use differ according to a purpose? Let's say you've got the same audience. You are writing a letter to your friend, the same friend. And in your letter, what you're doing is you are asked to congratulate your friend and at times you may be asked to sympathize with your friend. This is the same friend we are talking about, which means that it's the same audience. But within the same audience, within the same recipient of the letter, the moods, the situations are different. And the differing situations in writing the differing situations they call, or rather they demand, a different tone. They demand a different tone. Different tone because the situation is different too. Even if I'm writing a letter to the same friend of mine. When I talk about situations, what are we referring to? The situations we're talking about, it's we are talking about maybe a situation where your friend has won money, and a situation where your friend has lost a relative. Okay, these are different situations. Okay, what do you do when your friend has won money? You'll congratulate your friend. Okay? Which means that the one thing that we're expecting you to do is to be happy for your friend. But if the same friend of yours has now lost a relative, we expect you to be sad and sympathize. Okay, so these are different situations that arise. And as a learner, you need to display the ability to determine what language you can use. That is, what will be the purpose of your writing. So if your purpose is to congratulate, we expect you to use what? A happy tone, which is one of the things that I introduced or that I talked about in our introductory part of this lesson. But if the same friend of yours has lost a relative, which is this one, we expect your tone to be a sad one because you are sympathizing with your friend. You can't be happy when your friend has lost a loved one. You can't be writing to your friend and updating her or him about what? The latest clothing label that you own, your latest or recent achievement. You can't be doing that because the context does not allow it. So you are expected that from the beginning, from the introduction of your writing, you need to use that calm tone. Use the calm tone throughout your writing, and a sad one. Capture what? The correct or the appropriate tone of your voice. It requires you to be polite and more polite. In that one, calm, be sad. That way, or rather in that way, you will be achieving the purpose of your writing because the situation demands that. Okay, the situation demands that. I'd like us to look probably at different types of writing a friendly letter, for example. Maybe let's just say a friendly register. This gets us to what we call special types. That is special types of friendly register. The different types of friendly register, some of them we've already talked about. You might write, as I've already stated, to congratulate. What is it that is expected of you when you have to congratulate a friend? As already stated, we expect a happy tone. Show that you're happy. All right? And being happy, we don't expect you to be negative. So no negativity. Such as but. So you cannot say, I'm happy for you, my friend, but I wish you take me with you whenever you go to spend the money. You're not achieving the purpose there because you're not congratulating the friend. So there are no buts when you congratulate. So we expect a happy tone throughout your writing. Okay. So the next one probably, let's say you are to advise. That's advise. If you are to advise a friend, we expect what? A serious tone of voice. Because when you're giving an advice to a friend, no matter how much you're close to that friend of yours, no matter what type of conversations you normally have together, all the happy memories and everything that you do together, but when you are talking about an advice, you obviously need your friend to take you seriously. The purpose of advising is for your friend to do what? To accept or rather, let's say, take your advice. We expect your friend to accept or take your advice. That's what we expect. I'm sure we can note the difference between this advice and advise. This advise is a verb, and this one is a noun. Note the differences in spelling. We've got advise and advise. All right, back to the lesson. Whenever you advise, you are asked to advise a friend, you want your friend to accept the advice or take it, consider doing that. So if you use a casual tone, chances are your friend would not take the advice because your friend will not take you seriously. Yet, if you are serious, if you use a serious tone, your friend will see that you are being serious and will take you seriously, meaning that it's going to take your advice or advices seriously because you are using the correct tone of voice. If you become so bubbly and jovial, yet you are giving advice, probably your friend would not take you seriously. In fact, he or she is going to focus more on the positives because we really need advices, especially from our friends, because we think we are peers. All right. So, who is he or who is she to tell me what to do? It's because she or he is jealous. That is why it thinks this way. It is so likely that they take you like that. But if you become serious and polite at the same time in your writing, then it becomes simpler and you have just done what? You have achieved the purpose of your writing. It's not a get out of get out of the way situation whenever you have to do something for a friend. You seriously want the friend to consider whatever that you're doing. So, writing a letter, for example, to a friend and advising your friend would call for you to use what? A serious tone. So that, because you are tackling what? A serious subject. So that even your friend takes you seriously and consider doing whatever, or taking, or rather consider doing whatever advice that you are talking about. All right. So, let's get to the third one now. Maybe a different scenario that calls for a different type, because that is what we are talking about. We are talking about types of friendly register. We talked about sympathy, a situation where your friend has lost a loved one, or her or his valuable possessions, and you are writing to sympathize with your friend. The language that you are expected to use when you're congratulating a friend would be different from the one that you'll use when you are sympathizing with your friend. All right. What is the tone that we expect when you are sympathizing? We expect a sad tone. It has to be a sad tone, but find a balance to be at the same time motivational. As much as it is a sad tone, but try to be motivational. That is, being motivational will mean that you need to give what? Hope. Use a sad tone, but in your sad tone, don't get too sad to a point where you make things worse. You can't be saying probably a friend has lost her father, and you say, "I'm very sorry for you, my friend. I really don't know what you are going to do. Tell me, how are you going to pay school fees? Who is going to pay for your education? Who's going to pay for your clothing? Who's going to provide for you? What are you going to eat, my friend?" Because he was the only one who was a provider in your family. Seriously, my friend, I think that you must find yourself a job and leave school because you cannot. You are not necessarily sympathizing by so saying. It's like you're saying, yeah, it serves you right. So that is why we're saying that you use a tone where you are supposed to be, as much as you are being sad and sympathizing and empathizing at the same time, but try to give hope by using a motivational tone. Okay. And at the same time, one other thing that is important that you might want to include is if a friend has lost a loved one, you need to offer what? Condolence. So you need to offer condolence. And probably your availability to help whenever you are needed, or wherever he or she might need you or need your help. Because by so doing, you are sympathizing with your friend, you are empathizing, you are being there for your friend. And those are the things that we would probably expect in those different types of registers. Okay, I want us to look at now at a maybe a specific question that we might want to consider. Before going to a specific question, let's look at this. These examples of letters. From these examples, I need you to take from them the content and not the form. That is to say, you take the content and not what? And not the structure that has been used in writing, because our structure is different from what appears here. Okay, so here we've got a letter written by a student, or maybe an example of a letter. Let's just say it's an example of a letter. The letter is by Cindy there, and Cindy wrote the letter to Debbie. And what is she doing? She is regretting. So it's a letter of regret. When can we expect a letter of regret? We can write a letter of regret when probably we have been invited or we were expected to do something or to honor a certain invitation, but then for some reasons we fail to do that. And then we are writing the letter of regret. I want us to look at the tone that has been used here. And what is it that the writer did? Because no one takes regrets, rejects. Because if someone writes a letter of regret, it means that he or she rejects your invitation. And it's a painful situation, that one. So you need to give it the attention that it deserves as far as the language that you're going to use. You're writing a letter of regret, probably you've been invited somewhere. You need to show positivity and kind of show that you feel like it is your loss, the fact that you cannot honor the invitation. Show willingness to attend, but for some valid reasons. Not a reason like, I just don't feel like. Not a reason like, no, when I looked at the weather forecast, I saw that it will be cold on that day, so unfortunately I can't make it, my friend. No, that's not the kind of apology that would expect. So, looking at this letter closely, it says, your invitation, like I said, we have to ignore the structure. That is, for example, this space here. We are not supposed to do that. But let's just look at the content and at the writing of this one. Your invitation to a hayride, or rather to a hayride on June 2 sounds exciting. See that? Sounds exciting. You are showing that you are happy for the invite. And here, when you're saying that your invitation to a hayride on June 2, this is a reference so that your friend knows what you are talking about. It sounds exciting. I can even put in an exclamation mark there. The weather is perfect right now. So you're talking of the weather being perfect. We are being positive about that. So the weather is perfect right now for an outdoor party. I can see myself behind the horses and taste the hamburgers. So you show what? You show interest in the event in which you have been um, invited for. We have to show interest. We are showing interest there that, you know what, I was interested in coming. That's the right one, or rather a right tone. But when you now change and say, unfortunately, you are preparing your friend for the bad news. All right? My parents and I will be out of town that weekend. I'm so disappointed. This statement or statement or expression, it goes back to what? It shows a regret. I'm so disappointed. This connective there, unfortunately, it shows regret. So by using these, you are being what? You are being appropriate as far as using the language, which is the register, is concerned. And then finally, you say, thank you for the invitation. I always enjoy your outings. So it's not a matter of what I experienced when I'm with you. It's not a matter of being disinterested in what you're offering, but it's only that I'm held up. I've got other commitments. That is why I cannot honor your invitation. The tone, we feel it is correct. We feel that the language is appropriate because, used words like, unfortunately, I'm so disappointed. But at first you were positive to show what? That, I was interested in coming. But then the problem was that I'm committed. I've got different commitments. All right, let's see another different type of letter as an example. Yes, a letter of sympathy. Now we are writing to sympathize with a friend. Let's look at the tone and the content. What are the things that we'd expect you to include? An example, that is practical examples of what we've just discussed a few minutes ago. In this one, which is a letter of sympathy, again, we pay attention to what? To the content and not the form, and that is not the structure of writing. Letter writing in terms of how do we introduce it, the body, what is there, and a conclusion, we're going to discuss it in another lesson. All right. So here we are focusing on the language, on the content of whatever that has been presented. Let's look at this one. This one is written to Greg by Matty. Okay. So Greg is the recipient there. Let's see what it's about. But what we know so far is that it is a letter of sympathy. And we know when a letter of sympathy is written. A letter of sympathy is written when something sad happened or has happened. It's not a nice situation. So let's see what language has been used there. Here. I was so very sorry, or rather, I was so sorry to hear about your aunt's death. Look at the opening line, or rather, the opening phrase. I was so sorry. The word sorry, it echoes the purpose, which is to sympathize. And the word sorry, automatically it gives the tone of voice that is going to be used throughout the writing, and it is appropriate. You cannot begin with, say, how are you, my friend? This side life has been treating me very well. Guess what? I've passed my... No. It's not about you. It's about your friend. So, I was so sorry to hear about your aunt's death. So here, the unfortunate incident that happened is death. That is why it warrants what as a letter of sympathy. My family and I share your loss. Not just myself. My family and I share your loss, meaning that you are not alone. There's a saying in the English language that a problem shared is a problem solved. But if you carry your burden all by yourself, you're going to feel the might of the burden. So, here, when you say to a friend, my family and I share your loss, it makes the friend feel like he or she is not alone in this. At least she has some people that share the loss with him or her. Continuing, when I think of your Aunt Leah, I am reminded how often she took us picnicking when we were young. Remember walking to the park with our brown bags? Not many people entertain 5-year-olds as she could. Here, you are in the midst of this, you are being positive because you have got what? You have got positive memories of the person. Basically, what you're saying here, you are saying that I know that we have lost, or rather, you have lost someone who is precious, who was important to you. And I share the loss myself because I remember the good times that we had. So basically, we are validating and saying that when I say I share a loss, I mean it. Because what I can recall, I recall when we were still young, your aunt would do this for us. And that's a good memory. And probably wherever your friend is reading the letter from, it is going to put a smile on her or on him. When you remind him or her of the precious memories that you can remember from, or rather as far as the person who has since passed on is concerned. So you're using the right language at the same time. You're not being out of line here, because remember we said that in a letter of sympathy we don't expect you to make things worse as far as being said is concerned. But then you want to uplift the spirit of your friend. You want your friend to put a smile there and there. But you are not being out of line by so doing, because we are still talking about the same person in a positive way. Okay. So which is different from a situation where you'll be making things worse and probably reminding your friend how vulnerable he or she is without the person whom she or he has lost. Okay. And then say, when you offer help, at the end says, if I can help, please call. So you are offering help that, you know what, should you need a shoulder to cry on, should you need any kind of help, just call me. I'm willing to help you. Or rather, I'm offering myself for anything that would be needed. Okay. Maybe looking back now in our conclusion to the sentence and look at the things that we talked about today. We said that in today's lesson, we're looking at the different kinds of registers that we can use. And we said that the register that we can use differs according to different purposes and also according to a specific audience. We can write the same letter, or rather we can write a letter to the same person, but the contexts are different. And therefore, they will require a different register. And our focus one was on a friendly register and how it can differ from the other according to what? We said that it is according to the purpose of your writing. And in the far as the purpose is concerned, we talked about what? That what is the situation we talked of the situation. Is it a loss? And then again, we talked of the tone, that the tone needs to be, it can either be happy or it can be a sad tone or a serious one. Then I might add, it can also be a casual tone. But what determines what tone of voice you're going to use in your language, in writing, is going to be what? The situation. What are you writing about? What is the situation that you're given? Okay? We made examples like, are you sympathizing? Are you regretting an invitation? Are you accepting an invitation? Are you advising a friend on something? And then also, we said that the register that you're going to use also differs within the same friendly boundaries of the register according to the audience. The audience, we said that you can write a letter to your father, to your sister, or let's just say to your sibling, maybe to your aunt, to a friend. The tone of voice that we use when writing to a father will be polite. And to a sibling, it might be casual. To an aunt, we'd expect it to be somewhat polite, but not as it would be for your father. And then to a friend, it's going to be casual. And the details that you can include too are going to differ. We made an example that imagine you're writing a letter to a friend and you're telling your friend about a trip that you recently held or had to probably Devon. There are certain details that you might include when you are writing the letter to your friend, but those details you'll not include when you are writing a letter to your father. So that's the important thing that we always need to mind whenever we are writing. We need to take note of in our writing. Look at the purpose, look at the situation, look at the audience. Who are you writing to? Let's not just treat friend letters, for example, as just one friend letter and then we're going to use the same tone, casual tone in everyone. It differs according to the purpose. Do you have to use a happy tone, a sad one, a serious one, or a casual one? And it also differs according to the specific audience this time around. What is the expected interaction or relationship that you have with the target audience of that particular writing of yours? That's it for our lesson today. Thank you very much for watching. Until we meet next time, I wish you all the best.